We are right now talking about the breaking real news, which is that the bond, that you heard today when buildings were going to be seized, all of that was supposed to start happening this morning at almost at $500 million that was needed. We now know that the court has decided to reduce that, give 10 days to get it done, and drop that to $175 million, which is likely, according to President Trump himself, likely within reason. He can actually get that done. Still, as you said, an egregious number, still something we don't agree with, but you can't help but take that as a bit of a win in the New York system right now. The fact that it has been dropped to a number that, yes, sure, for any of us would be a ridiculous sum, but for President Trump, it's a little bit more likely. Getting $175 million won't be near as hard. I also want to play for you a clip from Frank Luntz. This obviously is before the breaking news that came out just moments ago that bond has been dropped. But this is from Frank Luntz, pollster. You've seen him on Fox News for decades at this point. Not exactly someone who you think is just throwing out their Trump talking points or anything like that. I want to hear what you had to say about if they do start taking assets, what do they do, and what he thinks the future looks like.
I want you to remember this moment, and don't forget it. If the New York Attorney General starts to take his homes away, starts to seize his assets, it's all going to be on camera. Pundits are going to sit there and scream about this. This man cannot be elected. You're going to create the greatest victimhood of 2024, and you're going to elect Donald Trump.
Whether you see that as a threat or as that a statement, or he didn't come out necessarily with excitement, but the fact that you have people saying those kind of things, and I think we're seeing that in the comments, we're seeing that in people's response to this. Again, we're even seeing it now as the president has had his bond lowered significantly to $175 million. I know President Trump just spoke, so we're going to try to get that information here and play that clip for you in just a minute, because he is actually in court, Will, on the headlines are a little misleading right now.
Right.
Because you'll read Trump in court as the bond is dropped, lowered. He's actually in court on a different case.
Right. That's the Alvin Bragg campaign finance case that the trial date was supposed to already have started. Actually, I believe this week is when they were supposed to start trial, but then they agreed to a month extension, and now there is some sort of documents dispute about who had which documents when, whether the defense had the appropriate documents at the appropriate time, which could delay that even further. But you're seeing that simultaneously as you were expecting. So that's New York City. You were expecting to see the Attorney General of New York in the civil fraud case start trying to seize assets. So these headlines were competing with each other and got a little confusing that he was in court on one thing, but then we were expecting to see his assets potentially seized in another manner. And what we're seeing now is that the assets will not be seized today, is because the appeals court, if you're just joining us, the appeals court has delayed the deadline now by 10 more days. So President Trump has 10 more days to post bond. And that bond...
That was supposed to be today.
Correct.
Today,
she could have started seizing assets today.
This morning, yeah.
Which makes sense now why we didn't see a huge rush, is that they were probably noticed by the appeals court, wait for our opinion. And now we get this out of the appeals court that he has, within 10 days, has to put up a bond amount of $175 million, which would have been in contrast to the bond amount he would have to do, which was 120% of the judgment at $545 million. I think what some commentators I was seeing just before we went on the show, Jonathan Turley, that's on Fox, he was saying that to some degree, yes, it is a win for President Trump, but President Trump still has an ability to be a little bit upset with the amount, because many times in these civil fraud cases, the bond amount is there to protect the victim. And what we've said through this entire drama in the state of New York is that this is a victimless crime.
Yeah.
The bank said we were not victims. The bank said we were not defrauded. The bank said he paid back everything. The bank said we did our own due diligence. Yeah. So it didn't matter what his valuations were. That's normal course of business.
So here's President Trump moments ago.
Thank you very much. Judge Concurrent has done a terrible disservice to the state of New York. What he's done is terrible. Businesses are fleeing, and you see that. We just released a statement on truth. Businesses are fleeing and crime is flourishing all over the state, and what he's done is such a disservice and should never be allowed to happen again. New York State is being battered by his decision. So I greatly respect the decision of the appellate division, and I'll post either $175 million in cash or bonds or security or whatever is necessary very quickly within the 10 days. And I thank the appellate division for acting quickly. But Judge Engoron is a disgrace to this country, and this should not be allowed to happen. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was a statement from President Trump. Clearly, Will, though, taking this as a win. I think that that is a different, because I told you I didn't know how necessarily they were going to present it, but they are presenting it as a win, and a thankful win. And yes, I can do it, is essentially what he's saying.
And there's also a statement that just came out of the Attorney General's office, Letitia James, where she's saying the judgment of $454 million still stands. So that's the explanation that we need here.
Yeah.
The appeals court didn't overturn the judgment or the amount that he was found civilly liable for within this case. But the quirk of the system is that he had to post bond, or he had to pay the full amount and able to go through the full appeals process.
Yeah.
What she's saying is he's still on the hook for the full amount, even though the appeals court said he can appeal the judgment and not have to put up the full amount. So there is a little bit of nuance there that it is a preliminary win, even
I wasn't sure if he was going to take this as a win or not. Clearly in his statement, taking the victory, taking this as a win. Here's a statement from Letitia James. Just came in. And I'm reading it the first time you are. So you know what? If there's anything in here that's, don't take this as my words. Donald Trump is still facing accountability for his staggering fraud. The court has already found that he engaged in years of fraud to falsify, inflate his net worth, and unjustly enrich himself, his family, and his organization. The $464 million judgment plus interest against Donald Trump and the other defendant still stands. So what you have is Donald Trump saying, I win, and her saying, slow down. This is just a small victory for you maybe, or just a small delay in the road for us having victory.
I think, though, it does, to some degree, show that the appellate division of the state courts in New York at least maybe is a little bit more reasonable than we know all the issues that came out of the judge at this early stage. This wasn't a jury trial. This was decided by the judge. He prejudged it. He'd been overturned on other things by the appeals court before. So when everyone was shocked at that $454 million civil liability that was placed on the former president, I think that this maybe can bring a little bit of sanity back. I don't know where it goes from here. I don't know what the makeup of that appellate court or even what the state Supreme Court will do. But even if they reduce that from what is one of the most outrageous things any of us have ever seen, utilizing the judicial system in a state court to go after a former president for a victimless crime that wasn't a crime because the people were saying there was no crime, but New York happens to have a specific statute where they can say, you know what, maybe it is a crime. So what we're seeing here is hopefully a little bit of sanity, even with that bond amount reduced, that they're like, listen, we should let this play out. Let's reduce it so it doesn't all of a sudden become havoc where you're seizing all the assets, making a public spectacle, and maybe they're afraid that they'll re-elect him as well.